from this computer. Okay, we're on. I am here with Kat Toren off the release of Scintillating Beauty by the Humankind, Kat Toren's Humankind band, which is very quickly becoming one of my favorite releases of the year. Yeah, it's a stellar, spiritual, great record. I wrote down that compared to your last record, I think that this one has a lot more resolve. The last album's a bit more tense, and that's my first question. Sort of is it's sort of a two-part question, but how do you incorporate these non-musical ideas? Because I know that the last record was sort of inspired by your feelings towards the 2016 American election, and this new record came out of sort of a glimmer of hope during that era that appears to be ending at the very least. So how do you incorporate that into instrumental music? Because that's something that's always fascinated me, is the kind of where art and words kind of can't agree.
Yeah. It fascinates me also, and it's not always easy to achieve because, as you said, it's instrumental music. I'm not telling you anything with words or my voice or anything like that.
You're stuck with just song titles, right? So
exactly, and that does make a bit of a difference, the title of the piece. Definitely. And title of the album, and I do have something I want to say. So I do write liner notes. For the last two albums I wrote liner notes, but I mean, my job is to convey feeling through the sounds. So if no one had anything to read inside the album liner notes, then I should be able to convey some sort of a feeling of how I want to express myself. So it's in top of my mind when I'm composing. I'll start composing usually by improvising, and I kind of just fall into idea. At least for this group, it's always different. For the different groups, it's different. But for this one, I try not to think too much. I improvise. I fall into an idea and I explore that idea, and it gives me some sort of feeling or a sense of something that's going on in the world that I want to convey. I think pretty much all original new music is expressing something of the time, I would say. So I was trying to express something of the time in 2016 from the last album, and I started writing the music for Scintillating Beauty probably 2 years after that, maybe it was 2018. I'm just sort of guessing right now, but and the reason I was feeling this glimmer of hope was because after that election, it was so surprising to me, the outcome. Maybe that's because I'm from Canada, I'm learning about the country, I don't know, but it surprised me. And the hope I felt was because all of a sudden the country was in this dialogue that was necessary, and a dialogue that was not happening before, where I think there was just a lot of unknowns and people weren't really expressing themselves. I don't totally believe people are expressing themselves all in a healthy way, but at least it's happening, and we're starting to learn about one another. I kind of got off the topic about the writing of the music, but yeah. Well,
the hand of kind of people was forced, where it's like, well, we can't just harbor these, I don't know, prejudices or even just general sort of feelings about society at large anymore. It's got to be talked about. It's in our face. We've become incredibly transparent by and large. I think, the idea that we can't talk about religion or politics at the dinner table is out the window, right?
Yeah, for better or worse. I mean, overall, it depends on the situation, but I think overall it's for better. We got to be talking about this stuff. And with the writing, what was I going to say? I can't remember. Hopefully you edit this for radio.
Yeah, I'll edit it for the radio, the podcast version. Pure, though.
It is what it is. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Great.
So let's just talk about the record. What's the process like? I make music too, but I've never really made a proper band album. I'm mostly by myself. So how do you communicate with people as a band leader? I know that you've played in various bands, Pugs and Crows, Juno Award-winning Pugs and Crows.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yes, of course. But yeah, how do you sort of take charge, but also let people express themselves? Because I know a lot of the music is improvised. I'm sure that, you know, you're not the only one improvising on the record and stuff. So
yeah, I try to have equal parts for like it, for each instrumentalist, meaning I want everybody to have their voice being heard. So I write with that in mind. If I have a song that has solos, I will also write with the strengths of each member in mind too. So if I need something to be, you know, kind of have a lot of feeling and getting really big and on the louder end of the spectrum, I'll probably throw that to Xavier.
yeah, that's the saxophone player, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
He plays tenor saxophone on the record.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really beautiful, delicate moments between me and Yoshi, who plays the oud on the album.
Okay.
And I think having this quintet that's very dynamic, has a lot of softs, and then a lot of, you know, a lot of those small feelings and very big feelings, it makes for a really great 40 minutes of music, I think.
Yeah, I find too, it's a rare example of sort of a spiritual jazz record, if you want to call it, where I never found that the beauty was never lost, if you know what I mean, on this record specifically, where it never feels dissonant at all, both musically and sort of structurally. Yeah, it's like,
yeah, I do like to play around with drones and leaving the tonality and coming back to it in a seamless fashion, and having a drone underneath that can make everything a little bit more cohesive. And it's a sound that I really like, because there's this rock and there's this anchor, and you can go anywhere and come back and you'll still feel like you haven't lost yourself.
Yeah, it's the root under the tree or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's something I wrote down. It's not really a question, but it's the, you know, versus your traditional drone music, like a la Lamont Young and stuff, you are equally exploring emotion and feeling, but it's stressing one specific. Whereas with the music you make, it's much more of a dialogue, right? It's this grander thing. They both have their time and place, but
exactly. Yeah, they both do. Yeah, and I, you know, you'll see something in my chart that says G pedal and begin soloing G Locrian-ish. Like you would see that in my music, and then we'll see where it goes. I tell the guys, you know, it's like, it doesn't matter where it goes. This is where we're ending up.
Yeah.
And then they'll see that in the chart too.
So that's something I'm curious about. I'm not particularly musically trained. I know my scales and stuff, but what does it look like writing this kind of music? Like, what is the, because obviously, again, as I said, there's a communication and improvisation, but what do your charts look like? You know, is there a time structure? I'm sure there's a chord structure of some kind, but
yeah, some of the charts are really long, probably longer than they need to be, but I couldn't figure out how to make it shorter. Like, I think the first track is 5 or 6 pages long. It is about a 15-minute piece, so I guess that kind of makes sense. Yeah. But it's because little things are always changing. It doesn't sound like much, but you have to write it down. This, you know, like the scale will change by 1 note, so I have to write the scale again, right. Or the mode, I should say. And the mode will change by another note. The root will change. I have to write it again. You know, I have to make it clear for everybody. And then there'll be a little moment, improvise, and then there'll be an arrow. This is where we're ending up.
Right.
So
okay,
we have to learn how to work with that. And of course, we have to rehearse and figure out how we're going to achieve the sound together.
Cool. Yeah, I've never thought about it. You know, I've listened to all these jazz records, and I've never thought about how you get there. You know, the sort of DNA of it all. So
you have to trust the people you're working with.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's another interesting point about composing. It's like, are you composing for specific people that you trust and you know it's going to work? Or how do you write the chart if you're composing for maybe hired musicians that you're only going to meet for 10 minutes before the show?
Yeah.
that would be very different.
Is that something you've done before?
Yeah, that is something I've done, and I think it's something everybody needs to have the skill for as well.
Be able to do both those things, I suppose. Yeah.
I think so.
So I guess speaking of playing live and etc., I'm always curious. I've asked every artist I've talked to this question, but how conscious are you of an audience when you are writing, when you're recording, when you're releasing, and when you're performing? And like, do you find that feedback and any of that influences the creative process? Yeah.
That is a good question. Ultimately, yes. I'm not thinking about the audience in terms of, I hope that they will like this. Of course, I hope that they're going to like it, but first I'm writing what I believe to be my best music. And then I just have just faith that that is going to be received by other people. But in a live setting, because there's so much improvising, and improvising it's like a high risk, high reward endeavor, you know?
Yeah.
So you have the energy of the people that are in the room. And that energy usually for me is some sort of nervous excitement.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I channel that in the way that I know how. So of course it's been interesting doing these live stream shows where there isn't an audience, but surprisingly it still kind of feels like a show, you know, it's a camera in your face and all this stuff. So even though it's not quite the same, I still have that same energy that I can work with.
Cool. I was going to ask you just how did you get here? How did you get to making these records? I was talking to my partner in the car today and we were listening to your record, and I was just like, how does someone get to making this kind of music like throughout their life? How do you get to this sort of plane of like this sort of ineffable spiritual quality to your music? How did you have any eureka moments at a young age listening to jazz or learning to play instruments?
I can't pinpoint to a eureka moment, except maybe the first time I knew about freely improvised music.
Yeah.
I can remember that moment very specifically. I had studied classical music for my whole childhood up until I was about 17, I believe. And then I began studying jazz music exclusively. And there was a poster up at the college that I was at for my undergrad. And it was a workshop on free improvised music, like a 10-day workshop. And we went in every single day. And I was like, I don't know what this is all about, but I'm going to sign up for it. Yeah. And it was possibly the first time I felt like I was expressing myself and I wasn't overthinking and I didn't have a lot of nervousness around it. And it just felt right. I can't say I was good at it at that time or not, but it still felt right. And I was eager to get up and play. And I hadn't really ever felt like that before because I'm a bit of a nervous person. Yeah. So I found it very freeing, and I try to incorporate a little bit of that. I try to write music where I can have that feeling in every piece more or less, because that's why I play music, to feel like I'm expressing myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very obsessed with that kind of idea, especially with instrumental music. It's the truest expression if you have the tools to do so, right?
Exactly. So you spend time practicing your technique, just learning as much as you can, absorbing theory and whatnot, you know, whatever you're excited about musically. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to writing, try not to think about it too much. Try not to overthink if you can. That's the goal.
And the music that you seem to be drawn to is it's not very clinical music. You know what I mean? Like it's very much expressive at its core, right? That's
true, and that's that's something I have thought about.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I like that. I kind of am the kind of person that starts being quite clinical, I guess as you said, or academic, and then a short time later, I get a bit tired, like literally mentally tired. I'm like, you know, okay, I think I've got what I need to get out of this, and here's what I have to offer with that. And there it is.
Well, that's the jazz expression everybody likes to throw around is like you got to learn everything and forget it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who said that. I think people say it was Charlie Parker, but I don't know if that's true.
That's a good question. Never thought about who it was that said that. Now I'd love to know.
Me too. So I'm curious also about sort of I just have a sneaking suspicion that there's you have some kind of relationship with spirituality or meditation or some kind. I'm just curious if that's something that is a part of your life.
Yeah, it's helped me quite a bit. I grew up in organized religion, and that did serve me well, and it gave me a great foundation. And as I became a young adult and onwards, I found more that Eastern religion spoke to me, and practicing meditation and slowing down, calming down of the mind was really useful, and just becoming aware of, you know, just change is the only constant and all those cliches. When you really start to think about them, they're necessary, and necessary to, I don't know, study that and be all right with that. And it makes sense with free improvised music too, because it's
absolutely.
like when you're playing free improvised music, you're practicing for your own life in a way.
Yeah, from communication to meditation, right? And
exactly.
Finding the present, if you will, right? It's very
finding
rare.
The present, finding the change, finding it's like encompasses literally everything to me. It also in terms of relationships with other people, because yes, I play solo, but more often than not, I'm playing in a group. So how you react to what somebody else, quote unquote, said, and what I mean is played, what you make sonically as a group, the choices you make. And something I wrote in the liner notes of the album is honoring the self and then honoring others, which has been really in the forefront of my mind lately, because you know, out in the world right now, there's a lot of voices of minority groups finally being heard. So I've been thinking about it quite a bit. When you're playing in a free improv setting, especially if you've sort of been on a discussion about the topic ahead of time, it's really neat to think about how you're honoring others by listening and boosting up what they have to say, or just letting them play, not saying anything, you know, whatever's necessary. But equally important is honoring your own voice. That's something that's overlooked sometimes too.
Yeah, and you can aid the resonance of your own voice simply just by listening.
Yes, that's true. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So I always, this is another question I always ask people who have experience successfully performing music, whatever success means to, you know, everyone, is the ego. So I guess you're someone who practices meditation, so that's something you're probably quite conscious of. And how sort of this ties back into, you know, feedback and audience and stuff, but how perhaps your ego has changed or not changed over the years of being in sort of a performative art.
I'm trying to become more confident. My ego speaks to me a lot. It says, you're too loud, you played too much, it wasn't good enough, ... I would love to tell the ego to quiet down. And again, what happened in the moment is what happened. And to embrace that. And, you know, I had somebody tell me once, and I really like this, that any negative thought that comes into your mind is the ego. I was like, how do you know what voices to quiet down, which ones to listen to? And they're like, all the negative ones, they're the ego. It just was very easy.
Although what defines a negative thought, you know? Because a negative thought, I suppose, can be constructive, right?
But I think you can spin it in a positive way.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right, because you need to learn from your errors to improve.
Yeah.
But I think there's a way you can speak to yourself without putting yourself down.
Yeah. Well, and you can just understand, you know, anything that you feel that you've done wrong, it's already happened.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe just
we
don't
can
do it
only
again.
move forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like in this interview I keep not talking about music anymore.
That's okay.
I don't mean to do that. That usually doesn't happen, but here we are.
It's just a conversation, you know.
Yeah, I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
I guess we could talk about music. I don't know. You heard anything good recently? Any music that's really speaking to you?
Yeah. Yes, I recently purchased the John Luther Adams book, his latest book. And so I revisited his Become suite. He has these 3 orchestral pieces: Become River, Become Ocean, and Become Desert.
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying listening to those.
Is John Luther Adams? I listened to a guy named John Adams quite recently. Would that be the same person? It's kind of Steve Reich-esque, the music.
There's a John Adams and a John Luther Adams.
Okay, they're different people. Okay.
Yeah. If there was no middle name, it probably was
The other one.
It was the other. Yes, the
okay.
other.
Just to clarify for myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book. What is his? I'm looking him up right now. Global Warming and Art. And yeah. Okay.
He lived in Alaska. He lives in New York now, I believe, and he lived in Alaska for about 40 years. And his book is about his journey to Alaska and how he was a environmental activist and / composer. And that's about how far I am through the book at the moment.
Okay. That is always an interesting crossover.
Silence
though,
so deep.
right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
The environmentalism and there's a word that people like to use about listening to your environment. There's help me out. There's a word. Sound ecology, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of ties in. There's an artist, Andrea Pauly, that I'm quite fond of, who went to Alaska, and she does like environmental art, and she did this album of field recordings there, where it was just her out in the middle of the northern hemisphere, very much up there, and just the sounds of just brutal winter, along with the person on the radio talking to her. It's very interesting.
I'd like to check that out.
You should. Yeah, Andrea Pauly.
Andrea Pauly.
Yeah. I think she's only got one like album, and otherwise it's sort of more gallery focused kind of stuff. But
oh, cool. Yeah, I'm interested in that. Yeah, this composer John Luther Adams. Earlier we were talking about how can you write instrumental music and have it convey a certain something.
Yeah.
And I think some of his pieces really do an A+ job of that. There's a string quartet piece called The Wind in High Places, and it literally transports me to, I really love hiking, first of all.
Okay.
A lot.
Very Pacific Northwest of you. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I went hiking yesterday here, actually, in New York State. It was lovely. So his string quartet piece, The Wind in High Places, really transports me to the Alpine. Those short trees, and the wind howls through them, and it's really impressive. I recommend checking it out.
I'll check it out for sure. Does he use field recordings, or is it conveyed simply with instruments?
With instruments, and in his book, he was just talking about how he would go out and listen to birdsong, but he would just sketch sort of the arc of it, or a general. He wasn't too specific.
More like a map, right? Than a.
Yeah, and I like that because that's kind of like how I work too. Maybe I would write something specific, but it would never really quite end up that way.
Yeah.
More like a shape.
I always find, the bird song seems to bring great influence to great artists. Always. Miles Davis, I know when he first got his trumpet, he would just listen to the birds and try and play what they were singing. And are you familiar with Messiaen? That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I love Messiaen. He's a wonderful composer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ravel too. He has that piano piece. I forget the suite title Miroirs.
Okay,
Anyway,
I don't know that. I love Ravel though. He's got that beauty down, which I'm always interested in. That like very harmonious beauty.
Yeah, I'm really influenced by him. I'm not sure if you can tell or not.
I can hear it for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't have made the connection though, just because it's such a different musical context. But
yeah, but I played a lot of Ravel just at home, and when I improvise, I feel like some of his structures are under the fingers, and
yeah,
I really love that music.
Yeah. I don't know very much about Ravel. I just like the music, but
yeah. That's like enough. That's what you need to know.
Yeah, the music is really all that matters. I always like, it's like nice to do a Wikipedia deep dive and get the greater context, but really, if it's out in the world, it kind of no longer belongs to the creator, whether that's a good thing or bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel that way when you put out an album? Do you feel, okay, this is no longer singularly mine or my band's or whatever?
It's kind of fun to think about how other people feel when they're listening to my music, to imagine it. I could never know for sure.
Yeah.
But the people tell me how much they loved such and such song and it made them feel this way, which isn't exactly what I imagine. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but they have their own personal relationship with it. And I think that is very cool. But it's also still my piece. I have my own personal relationship. Yeah. So I guess you're right. It's like a combination of both.
Yeah. Because there's always an objective truth that only you will ever know to it. But sometimes there's no words, as we've talked about before, for that objective truth especially instrumental music. Again, it's not quite like poetry where there might be a definitive interpretation.
Yeah. And who's to say that another listener's perspective isn't also truth?
Yeah.
I guess it is.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
I don't know. We're getting really out there now.
Yeah.
I watched a movie. It's called Cemetery last night, and it was about some strange movie about the last elephant on Earth, and he was like leading these poachers to an elephant cemetery, and the movie was like very vague and a little bit hard to follow, and I didn't really know what was totally going on at any given time, but I loved the movie because it was so beautiful, and the vagueness gave me this this like eerie feeling. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I love this movie. It's so vague.
Yeah.
Like it's not necessary to always to say everything all the time.
Yeah. And film, I think, as an art form, struggles with that more than music, at least from an audience perspective, where people are not as welcoming for vagueness and open interpretation. With some exceptions, obviously, like David Lynch is very popular and his stuff is up for interpretation, and Terrence Malick to a certain extent. But I find the audacity to be vague in film alone is like something I always am very much admirable towards.
In film, you have it all, though. You can see it, you can hear it. Yeah. There's voices speaking more often than the time, so it's harder.
I think about that all the time. Is the like how medium really does matter, simply from an audience perspective, where passivity, or whatever the proper word for that, where music is at all times a passive thing to listen to, but also the antithesis of passive at all times. And visual art can only be like engaged with in a non. I can't remember what the opposite of passive is. Engaged. Active. Yeah. Whereas like paintings and stuff is always active, but it can just be a split second, which is very interesting. It doesn't exist in time. And then
what do you mean a split second?
Like I have a painting next to me right here. I could look at it for a sec, and that I'm engaged, but I can look at it, right. Whereas music, it's there. It's in the room.
Got it.
Room, you can't. It's not tangible, but it is. Yeah. And then film, like you could stare at your phone and miss out on stuff, but film is 100% active engagement from an audience perspective, and I find that very interesting. I don't know where I'm getting with that. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but
no, I am interested too in that. I like the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to lots of people about that. Because I've always struggled with painting and visual art, simply just because I don't know. I'm a music guy. It's I'm like, this isn't moving. You know, this isn't doesn't make me feel anything. But I've tried my best to try to wrap
Yeah,
my head around it.
but maybe certain paintings can tell a story if you feel absorbed by them.
Yeah.
I do know what you mean, but over time, as I got older, paintings have been more and more effective with me. I've really been enjoying going to galleries. I saw the Hilma af Klimt exhibit at the Guggenheim. That was one of the best art exhibits I have ever seen in my life. And interestingly enough, I could relate her art to music pretty clearly, at least to how I think about music and how I think about writing music. I don't want to totally draw that line because she's like, I don't know, like a goddess to me. So
I'm not familiar. Can you repeat this person's name? I'll give him a quick Google.
Sure. Her name is Hilma af Klimt,
Oh, there it is.
with an M.
So
she had a group of, I'm not sure how many, like maybe 5-ish women that she would have these, they call them automatic drawings, if I remember correctly. So this was a little while ago, so I hope I get everything right. But they would do automatic drawings together, and they would be channeling whatever word they used for a god or a spirit or whatever, and they would channel these spirits, and they would draw together. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of improvising together musically. Definitely. We would just channel whatever you want to channel, whatever that means to you, and then you create this art together. She took it way further. She heard voices, I suppose, from her spirit figure, asking her to do this large-scale art project that was going to be housed in this special gallery that didn't even exist, that actually, strangely enough, was similar to the Guggenheim, had like a spiral staircase and all this stuff. And it was a massive project with tons of paintings. And then they were hidden from public view for decades until pretty recently.
Who hid them?
She wrote in her will or something. You guys everybody fact check me.
I'm trying to right now too. I think you seem pretty on the nose from my tiny window of Wikipedia right here. But
it was either in her will or she asked a family member not to show anybody these paintings for 50 years after her death.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was
because she thought that the world wasn't ready for them.
Yeah. Looking at her work too,
so it was totally
died, super ahead of its time. 1944, and it's very much abstract expressionist.
So she, as they've been saying, she changed history in a way because her abstract work predates what is thought to be the first abstract art.
Yeah,
and not only that, she's a woman, and the first had been thought to be a man, which is also interesting.
I will deep dive into this. I'm very into I like my abstract art more than anything else. I think it speaks to the music I like too. It's all very like interpretive and stuff. Like
I try to write music.
I got a bunch of books on Rothko right in front of me. He's my favorite.
I agree. I really like Rothko too. I try to write some music about her paintings, and I did write some, but I don't feel like I've done it justice yet. They're more like exercises. So even if they just end up being exercises, I feel like I got a lot out of it, and just thankful that her work finally we get to see it.
Yeah, I've always liked that too. I've had lots of discussions just in my life about the fine line of appropriation, where you can just look at something and you go, I love this. How do I incorporate it into my work without stealing or whatever? I find the idea of stealing a very complicated sort of thing in art in general, but sometimes you don't want to start with a blank canvas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to channel X artist through my own medium and through my own eyes and stuff, and see what I get out of it. And even just as an exercise, it's how to break a writer's block of sorts, right?
You know, the band Cat Toren's Humankind sort of started as an exercise of writing in the style of Alice Coltrane.
Okay.
The first piece that I wrote for the group was never supposed to be a piece on an album that I would share with the world. I was like, I needed to write a piece for class. I was doing my master's in composition at the time, and it was in classical composition, but I took one jazz class for fun because it was very enjoyable. And it was the premise of the class basically was we compose music that we all just read on the spot. So it didn't have to be, it shouldn't have been too complicated, but not too easy. We play each other's music and talk about it more or less. And I needed to come up with something. And I'm a huge Alice Coltrane fan. So I was like, I'm going to kind of dive into her style a little bit. Maybe I'll write something that sounds like it's influenced by her. And then I started playing the piece at sessions. And it was so much fun to play. And everybody was just, I don't know, telling me that they enjoyed playing it and improvising on it and getting into something. And it stayed in the repertoire.
So I guess that's a positive influence from an audience, right? Where you go, oh, people like this. This works, or whatever.
Yeah, and it was fun for me too. And I'm glad I kept it in the repertoire. And you know, it's part of also the legacy of music and the legacy of jazz, looking up to the people that came before you and learning from them and passing down what you have to offer. That's a normal part of being a jazz musician.
Yeah, constant, like in the grand scale, interpolation, right?
Yeah, I actually never heard that word, interpolation.
Interpolation. It's where you quote something indirectly, I think, is what it means.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's not a direct quote, but to take. I think it's used in reference to hip hop a lot, actually. Interpolation, where you say something in the same cadence as somebody, but you don't say the same words or whatever.
Oh, cool! I love that.
Yeah, I remember I saw it in the liner notes of "The Chronic" by Dr. Dre, and right on. And I was like, okay, this is. I think he interpolated Maceo Parker or something. I can't remember who it was, but
I gotta check that out.
Yeah,
that's when I have to call my husband, and now he's a major hip hop fan.
Hip hop guy. Nice.
Yeah.
What are his guys? What is he like?
Well, by far his favorite is the Wu-Tang Clan.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's some interesting music too. It's like truly the production has got a lot of depth. I actually wrote down a question. I just wrote down the importance of fidelity, and I guess Wu-Tang is a great example of that. And I mean fidelity not in in marriage or whatever, but in the terms of sound sorry, in terms of like sound quality, because I often struggle with, no offense to bands like Snarky Puppy and stuff, where it's so glisteningly clean that I struggle listening to it. It sounds very overdubbed, and it's not like the jazz music that I like learned and is in my DNA and stuff. And if that's something you're conscious of.
I mean, I kind of like it both ways depending on my mood.
Right.
I want it to sound good, but I want it to feel raw a lot of the time.
Is it live? Are your records generally live? They sound live for sure.
More or less. We're all in the studio together, but we're all isolated except me and Xavier. We were in the same room and everyone else was isolated. But we all had sight lines, could see each other. So essentially it was played live. And we did it that way so we could get the best sound quality. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I find stuff like Snarky Puppy doesn't seem to sound live. It sounds too perfect for my taste. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it all. Yeah. I like it all.
Fair enough. I mean, them live is a different story though, because that's amazing. Just skill on display, right? I guess if we have the same way.
Virtuosic.
Yeah, about a lot of prog music, if you will, but not all of it. I like King Crimson and stuff, but yeah. Tell me about Pugs and Crows. I listened to Uncle yesterday, and I thought it was quite good. Very different from your self-titled stuff. And you play, I guess, piano and various keyboards in that band, right?
That's right. I play mainly piano, and I played some auxiliary percussion and some vibraphone.
Cool.
On the album, but mostly just piano. And that album is also different. It's not only different from my records as a leader, but it's different from all the other Pugs and Crows albums
it
too.
has singers, right, on it, on all the tracks?
Yeah, we have a guest singer on the entire album. Before, we would have guest singers on one track per album. That was a usual thing that we did. And this time we went all in. And you know what? I think it's my favorite album we've done.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to perform that record, and I still to this day like to listen to it, which is a pretty big deal because I don't really love listening to my own music all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear that piano in the background, but that's my baby girl. She's 9 months today.
9 months today. A whole other baby. Wow.
Yeah.
How is new motherhood treating you? Is that going well?
It's going great. I'm really happy. It has changed me in ways that you don't even know, which is what everybody says. That's the blanket statement. Yeah. And of course it's true. Everyone says it because it's true. It's also very difficult. I haven't had a lot of time to myself and to think about my career and to practice the piano. And she was born basically 2 weeks before the city went into lockdown 2 or 3 weeks. So it was a weird time to, all the things you thought might happen. You'd take her to these little classes, go to the library, have the family over. That was not possible. So it was challenging.
Yeah. New York is about to lock down again. Is that correct? That's what I've heard. I don't really know. I'm in Canada. I don't know. We're in a whole different situation, kind of. So.
Yeah.
They just
locked down. What city are you in?
I'm in Victoria.
Oh, you're in Victoria.
Yeah, we had basically no cases until now, and it's going up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be in Vancouver in just a couple weeks, actually. So I've been looking at the news and getting prepped for that. Yeah, New York, they just shut down the public schools again. It had been hybrid, and now it's back. So things they sort of shut down in waves and come back in waves, and you never know until the day before sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's the only way to do it, though, is it's such an unknown kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Having a child at this time must be incredibly interesting because it kind of forces you to face it, constantly. Because you, at the beginning, at least of the lockdown and stuff, you can't really go anywhere.
You can't really go anywhere.
New entity in the home,
I mean, I didn't expect to go very many places anyway, but I did expect my family to be around. All my family is in Canada, by the way.
Okay.
So, the borders were closed, so nobody's coming back and forth. And normally I would come back to Vancouver for the jazz festival. And I had even though it was canceled, I had intended to come back anyway, just to be in BC in the summer, because it's obviously the best place to be in the whole world in the summer.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when I couldn't go back, I was heartbroken. This is the longest I've been away from Vancouver ever in my whole life.
Yeah.
So it's been close to a year now that I haven't been back.
Wow. And
but when I get back, Pugs and Crows are planning to do a little bit of work. We're in a distanced and safe manner. We have some little projects that probably is gonna, hopefully that can still happen at our scheduled date.
You never know. I guess you never know.
Mm-hmm.
I've from what I understand too, BC is what they're doing right now. At least is just it's from what it looks like. They're just trying to save Christmas. You know.
Yeah.
That's
Are
what it
they
seems
doing
like
a
to me.
lockdown now so that Christmas can be relatively safe? Is that
Yes,
what you
that's
think?
what
Yeah.
that's what I think. Yeah, yeah. Although the lockdown is bizarre in BC in that restaurants are still open, bars are still open, everything's still open. Everyone's still like I work in a kitchen.
Hmm.
I still like nothing's changed in that regard. But that's it basically. Like we're supposed to stay home and there's X rules about hanging out with people, etc., which is relatively easy to follow. But
Yeah.
everything's open. So I just think if you're only supposed to see one person and restaurants are open, how do you know what I mean? Like, do they seat a table of 6? You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting.
I think it goes by household. So if you're in a 5-person household, I guess you
Exactly,
can
yeah.
be sitting together. I mean, I don't, it's hard to say because personally I would consider closing indoor dining and the
Oh, would I?
gyms
Yeah.
before the schools, but
Yeah.
that's only how do I know what the economy is doing and all the
Yeah,
details with that?
that's
I
where it gets
don't. But
complicated because it's, I've been laid off twice during this thing, 2 times. So,
yeah,
thankfully there was
it's
the
tough.
third. Yeah.
I just feel bad for all the kids because that's like an entire generation that for at least a year doesn't have proper education.
Yeah.
And not only that, the parents suffer too, especially the mothers. A lot of them have decided that they are going to go part-time or not work anymore so that they can help their kids.
Educate their kids. I read an article about that yesterday, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Certainly interesting. Yeah. And
Certainly weird. I mean,
college is
hopefully
online.
it all plays out okay.
Yeah. College is online and people are paying the same amount and the teachers have no I'm in university and it's bizarre. Had the
Uh-huh.
switch for sure. Yeah, it's the quality of education is completely dissipated in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. It's weird because you don't feel like, and I don't feel like you should have to pay the same amount. And I mean, I don't know where all the funding goes or anything, but from a teacher's perspective, I'm also a teacher.
Yeah.
It's difficult to teach online, and to do it well, you need to prepare and you need to, gather new skills. So
Yeah.
you should be compensated at least the same amount because it's actually more work.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a student, I wish I could go to the library, you know?
Yeah, of course.
That's where I get all my good work done. And I can't go to the library.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah.
I know, it's a shame all around.
Yeah. Okay. I think this has been a good conversation. I think we can call it here.
Okay, it's been really fun.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to just hit stop record. Listeners,
Okay.
Thanks for listening. This has been
Thanks.
Kat Toren, hot off the release of Scintillating Beauty. That's how you say the word, right? Scintillating?
You got it.
Yeah. And it's okay. I'm double checking again. The quote of that comes from a letter from Martin Luther King. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Check out that album. It is among my favorites of the year. And I don't say that lightly. So
Thank you so much.
thank you for coming. Thank you.